Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Susie and I love to share with you guys my vintage booth. I love to do thrift store shopping and thrift flips and sell the items in my booth, and I like to show you guys how I do that. If that's the kind of content you like, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you know when I upload a new video. Now let's get on to today's projects. For today's first project, Mom found this little wooden table. I believe it's handmade. It's never had anything done to it. It's got these things where the sides fold down. And of course, we are going to hide those hearts. So I have already made up some resin castings of some sunflowers. I chose this one because of the size of them. They were really the only one large enough I had to cover the heart. So I'm going to glue these on with some Type Bond glue. If you're interested in knowing how I did the resin casting, I have lots of videos on that. I'm not going to get into that in this video, but there are several where I show you how I do those. So since the inside is hollow, I am making sure to get the Type Bond quick and thick glue all around the edges of the sunflower, and I really want to make sure it sticks. And to hold it in place, I'm just going to use some painter's tape, and I'm going to go ahead and do both sides of the table and the inside so we get all those hearts hidden really well. And then once it's dried, we have a nice clean slate to start painting. Y'all, look at the details in these molds. All of the IOD molds are this way. I love doing the resin castings. So we are about to paint this table. You do notice those are clear. It's just a different type of resin. I ran out of the 10-minute resin, so that was the longer setting up time. We're going to use a new color. This is Bellwood by Fusion, and it is a gorgeous sage green. Most of our projects today are going to be in that color. I'm also going to be using my Stallmaster large brush. It makes quick work of this table. This paint goes on so smooth with this brush on this unfinished wood. So we're just going to get it all painted up. We're going to paint over all the molds and everything. Even though the coverage is amazing, I'm going to go ahead and give this table 2 coats of this Bellwood paint, and then we're going to be ready to move on to the next step. We're doing a lot of different aspects on this table. You'll get to see molds, stamps, and transfers all in one project. To start with, I'm just going to take some artist brush and go ahead and paint in my sunflowers how I want them. Just going to do some yellow on the petals, some green on the leaves, and some black in the center. And then we're going to soften all that up. I did forget to film, but once I did get it all painted, I did some white wax over the top, but we're not stopping there. I'm not worried about making this absolutely perfect and staying in the lines because, like I said, we're going to do a lot of different things to this. Just getting a little bit of color that's going to come back from underneath on these sunflowers. I'm going to use my heat gun to dry this paint up, and then, like I said, I'm going over the entire table with white wax, including over all these molds. That white wax is going to sit down in all those crevices, and it's going to soften up all those paint colors that I just put on there, but they're still going to be there. They're just not going to be as bright. And then I'm just going to take a paper towel and wipe it back. Once I did that, I decided that it was just a little bit too light. So I came back with a little bit of dark wax and went over the centers of the sunflowers. And then I'm going to use some metallic bronze paint and just dry brush it over the petals, just giving them a little bit of a shimmer. And I'm going to use this same technique through all of the 4 sunflowers on the legs of this table. And then we're moving on to the next step, which is going to be transfers. Now, IOD has sunflower molds, sunflower transfers, and sunflower stamps. So we're just going to use all of them on here. I'm getting out all the sunflowers from the Painterly Florals transfer pack. That transfer pack has lavender, peonies, and sunflowers. Look at my little cat playing peekaboo there on the table. He is always my little helper down here in the workshop. If you've never used a transfer before, I just kind of got them placed how I wanted on the table. And then all your transfers come with this little transfer tool, and you just rub on them, and I kind of lift from one edge, and you can tell your colors will change just a little bit. You can tell when it releases from the plastic backing, and just slowly lift up your corner as you go. And if you have a spot that didn't transfer, you just lay it back down and continue rubbing until your image comes off on your project. And then once your image releases onto your project, you want to take your plastic backing and then just rub it over the sunflower. This is called burnishing. It gets all the edges and everything to stay down permanently. And then I did the stem, but I messed up here and it pulled up some of my sunflower, but that's okay. You can also layer over your transfers. So I'm going to take the next sunflower and just go right over where those two would have connected. And if you see, I have those little cracks there where the sides of the table lay down. If you push down in those cracks, it will release, and then you can take a utility knife and just kind of cut the transfer down the middle of the crack. So you can go over all kinds of surfaces with transfers. Now that we have our transfers on, we're going to move on to stamps. Y'all, I cannot believe I have never used this stamp set, but I haven't. But that's a perfect opportunity to show you guys when you first get your stamp set, you want to season them up. So all the stamp, this is a 2-page stamp set. So this one comes with 2 pages, but you want to pull off the plastic backing, and then you want to take some 220 grit or a light grit sandpaper and just rough up your stamps just a little bit. I like to do it when they're still on the plastic backing. Just makes it easier. They don't move, and it only takes one time, and then you're ready to use your stamps. So we are going to put stamps right on with the transfers. I'm going to start with the big sunflower here, and I'm going to stamp it right on top of the table. I'm using some IOD ink, and y'all don't forget all the paint and products that you see me using in today's video you can get on my website, susieonthefarm.com. That is SUSIE on the farm. So once you have your stamp inked up, you just want to carefully lay it down on your project. Once you lay it down, you're committed. You want to keep one hand holding your stamp still, and then use your other hand to go all over the whole project to get the ink down. I'm putting the big sunflower, and then I'm putting a stem, and most of your stamp sets come with stamp mask, and these are a tool that you can use to stamp over another stamp so it looks as though it is behind your original stamp. So that's just what I'm doing. I put the stamp mask over the large sunflower, and then I'm going in with the medium sunflower and stamping right over the top of that. The mask will prevent it from doing over your original stamp, but it will get the area so it looks as though that stamp is behind the original sunflower. Then we're going to do the same thing with the medium stamp, and we're going to put the smaller one over here. I'm also going to put a few stamps on the little bottom shelf of the table, and then we are going to seal up the entire thing with some clear wax, and I'm also going to go over the whole thing with some white wax just to soften up all of those colors. You can go over transfers and everything. Once my ink had dried, I went over with a baby wipe because I didn't like how shiny the ink looked over the transfers. And then we sealed the whole thing up, and this project is done. We have a lot of disparate aspects going on here, but I absolutely love how this turned out. It would be so cute in a little entryway where you can actually lay one side of the table down and it doesn't stick out far. Okay, so that project had a lot of different elements in it. We're going to break it down and do something really simple in this next video. Y'all remember this mirror I just showed you in a thrift haul? It's got lots of great detail. It's the perfect size, and I love this shape of mirror. You know, I usually don't tape off glass or mirrors because I'd rather just scrape them off, but I had the painter's tape handy, so I did go ahead and tape this one off. I've got it all cleaned up, and now I'm going to use the Bellwood, and I am going to use a pointed sash brush because it'll help me get into all those little cracks and crevices. We're going to give this mirror 2 coats of this Bellwood paint. I'm slightly obsessed with this paint color. Every time I open a new can of Fusion paint, I think, oh, this is my favorite color. But this one is my favorite right now. I love all sage green anyway. And this one is just so soft and so beautiful. Once the paint is dried, we're going to even soften it up a little more because y'all know how I love to use white wax over details. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come in with some white wax and just go over the entire mirror using a little, I don't know, wax brush or stencil brush or just a cheap brush to get into all those little cracks. And then I'm going to take a dry paper towel and come back and wipe it off the high parts and let it stay down in the cracks. And y'all, look how beautiful that white wax looks over this paint. I love it. Next, we're going to take off all the tape and we're going to clean up the mirror. And I don't know if y'all remember, but this mirror had a teeny tiny little chip on the underneath part of the glass. So I wanted to cover that up, and I had the painterly florals here. I know the sunflowers look gorgeous with this color, but I thought I would see how the peonies look, and I thought that they would be perfect to hide that little bitty tiny chip in the mirror, but still make it a usable mirror. I did have some peonies in my stash of unused transfers from this painterly floral pack. So I'm just going to put a couple up in the corner and a stem and some leaves on this. Transfers come off super easy on glass. So you just barely have to rub and lift, and they are transferred to your mirror. You can't seal them up on glass, but as long as it's just something hanging on the wall, you're not going to be touching it, or stuff's not going to be sitting on it, you're going to be fine not sealing your transfer. So I wanted this one to go right up against the edge of the mirror. So I cut a little bit of my plastic backing off so it would just fit further up in there. So that's all there is to this upcycle, but it's such a huge improvement. I am going to put this one on my website. I have already a couple of mirrors at the store, so I'm going to put this one on my website if this is something that you're interested in. It turned out so beautiful. So I got this pretty good size wood plaque. It's just a blank basically at a yard sale. I think it was under $1. And we are going to do a paint inlay on it. I'm using the same Fusion paint in the color Bellwood. And I'm going to give this one even coat throughout the entire plaque. And then we're going to come back and do the paint inlay. If you've never used a paint inlay, they are basically a paint pre-made paint art that you can transfer into your paint. IOD recommends that you use a chalk style paint that is reactivated with water, but I have tried it with the Fusion paint and it does work. You have to do it a little bit differently just because it does have the built-in sealer in it. You do not want to let it dry for a very long time or you will have a hard time pulling the paper back off. So I've got one even coat on the whole plaque. I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to come back and do another layer of paint. And that's what you put your paint inlay in, is your second layer of wet paint. When you do your second layer of paint, you want it to be even, but you want there to be a pretty good amount of paint on there because you really need a thicker layer of paint for your inlay to stick in. This is from the Melange Paint Inlay Booklet, and there is a gorgeous sunflower that I have been dying to use, and I thought this was the perfect opportunity as we kind of have this theme going on in today's video. So what you want to do is you're going to put your paint inlay into your wet paint. And lately I have been spraying the paint inlay on the paint side with some water. It just helps to activate that paint just a little bit easier so it will stick in your wet paint. You do have some time to move it around. If you don't get it exactly where you want it, it's not going to immediately transfer. It dries in your paint. So you want to get it just like you want it, and then you carefully want to get out any wrinkles that may be in it. Don't rub too hard. It's, pretty durable. It's not like a piece of decoupage paper. It doesn't tear that easily, but you still want to be really careful with it. And then I'll even take my brayer before I re-wet the paint inlay and go over it just to smooth out any wrinkles, because the wrinkles will show in your paint. So I want to get everything good and flat. And then once you have all your wrinkles out, you take your mister bottle and you want to re-wet your paint inlay paper. I like to put a pretty good amount of water on the top, and then I'll take a dry paper towel and just dab the excess water up, and that gives another opportunity to get that inlay down in your paint really well. So I let this dry for about 30 minutes, not any longer than that. You can tell it's dry to the touch and you can't even see your image anymore. But once you re-wet your paper, your image will come back. And here is where the magic begins. I get everything really good and wet, and then I let it sit for a good 30 to 60 seconds before I start pulling back the paper. You want to carefully pull your paper back so you don't tear it, because you can reuse these inlays up to 2 or 3 times. This is my favorite part. Look at that image. It's now on my project. I think it is so cool every time I do this. Oh, I just love it. If you haven't been brave enough to try a paint inlay yet, I highly recommend this Melange paint inlay because it has a lot of small projects that you don't feel like you're getting, jumping into more than you think you can handle. Paint inlays do need to be sealed because they can be reactivated. I like to take mine outside and just give it a good coat of a matte clear coat. So I did that, and now this is dry, and all I'm doing here is taking my ink pad and just kind of distressing the edges, framing it out just a tad. And then for the final step of this project, after the ink is dried, you guessed it, we're going to take some white wax and go over the entire thing just to soften up everything really well and seal it all in. I did use a clear wax first. I like to do that just because it gives me more control with the white wax and how much I wipe back. And then I'm just going to take a smooth cloth and wipe it all back. This gorgeous sunflower plaque is all finished now. I can't decide if I want to keep this or if I want to list it on the website. Be sure you check out Upcycled by me on my website, susieonthefarm.com, to see if I have this one listed. I have one more project for you all in this video, and it's so easy, and I'm so in love with the way it turned out. This is just a knife block that I got for less than $1 at the thrift store. I took the tags off. I'm going to clean it up. I loved this color of the wood, and I loved the wood grain. The size of this is perfect for just a little shelf sitter. And we are going to use some milk paint on this project today. The reason I chose milk paint is because it will still let a lot of that wood grain and everything show through. I'm going to be using Fusion Vintage Laurel milk paint. Milk paint comes in a powder form, and you just mix half powder and half water, and I like to let mine sit for 15 or 20 minutes before I start painting with it. This also is a sagey green type color, so I thought it would go great with our theme today. You want to mix this up really well, and while it's sitting, we're going to move on to the next step for our little knife block. Milk paint will naturally chip a lot, but this was a real dry wood, so I wanted to give it a little bit of encouragement. I am just going to go over just a few little areas with some Vaseline just to create some resist for the paint, and then we're going to come in and go ahead and we're going to do 2 coats on this knife block. I love it even after the first coat goes on, but I am going to go ahead and do 2 coats. See, we've already got a little bit of chipping in the places where I put that Vaseline. After I get the second coat on, I'm going to help it dry with the heat gun, and that will also promote a little bit of chipping. And then we're going to come in with some sandpaper just to get off any of the excess and really bring out all of those edges and the wood grain of this really awesome knife block. And finally, the last thing that I'm going to do is put some stamps on this. I'm going to use a little scene from the Rural Scenes stamp. It's got all these really amazing primitive scenes. You can mix and match them all up. I just chose a few trees and a house. I think there's a wagon in there and some little sheep that are going to be resting up on the hillside. I've inked it up with some black ink, and I'm just going to stamp it right on front of the block. After the ink has dried, you do want to seal up your milk paint. I used a combination of the clear wax and the white wax again, and that is all there is to it. This is a perfect little shelf sitter for your home decor. I am loving it. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video and the projects in it today. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it. Leave me a comment below. Let me know what was your favorite project that I did in today's video. I'll see you guys again next week. Thanks so much for watching.